Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us today to learn how we detect and mitigate hidden insider risks at Microsoft and how you can embark on this journey as well. My name is Erin Miyake, and I'm a Principal Program Manager working on the Microsoft 365 Insider Risk Management solution. So you might be asking yourself, why are we talking about insider risk today? Well, we know that insider risk is a prevalent concern for organizations. From a recent survey we conducted with security leaders, 93% of respondents said that they're concerned about insider risk at their organizations. And this really isn't surprising. We see more and more real-life examples of insider risk cases in the news, and it's affecting organizations of all sizes across different industries. And with the COVID pandemic, this risk is even more pronounced as this hybrid work environment is becoming the new normal, which really blurs the lines for workers across work and personal boundaries. So today we'll talk to some insider risk experts and get some of their learnings in this space. To kick it off, I want to introduce Dan Costa, Technical Manager at Carnegie Mellon University. Dan, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to see you again. I know we've worked a lot together in the past when I was an insider risk practitioner at Microsoft in my former role, and we were building out our program. So I know that you have a lot of great expertise in this area. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself, talk to us a little bit about the breadth of the insider risk space and some of the trends you're seeing in the insider risk space as well.
Certainly. So I'm the Technical Manager of the Enterprise Threat and Vulnerability Management team here at the Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute. Our team has been collecting and analyzing insider incident data for the past 20 years to help organizations gain an understanding of how different types of incidents tend to evolve over time, what vulnerabilities exist within organizations that enable insiders to carry out their attacks, and what can and should organizations be doing to prevent, detect, and respond to insider threats, and more recently, manage insider risk to acceptable levels. So when we talk about the breadth of insider threat and insider risk, at the heart of it, we're talking about the misuse of authorized access to an organization's critical assets. We think through who has authorized access to our organization's critical assets. Those are full-time employees, prior employees, if we've forgotten to disable and turn off their access, but certainly our contractors and other trusted business partners. And it's important for organizations to think through, for the same level of access, regardless of your employment status, what are the protections we have in place regarding the protection from misuse of that access for those different types of individuals who work with our organizations? So the misuse of authorized access to organizations' critical assets, that opens up into a couple of different scenarios that we've studied over the past 20 years. Those include things like fraud and theft of intellectual property and IT system sabotage. It also include things like workplace violence and even the unintentional insider threats of somebody falling victim to a social engineering attack or being co-opted by a malicious threat actor on the outside to misuse their authorized access. When we think about the themes and trends in the space of insider risk management, one of the first things that we help organizations try to understand is that managing insider risk is an enterprise-wide activity that requires both technical and non-technical solutions. One of the patterns that's emerged from our study of incident data over the past 20 years has been this combination of personal predispositions and stressors in people's lives that yield concerning behaviors that, if maladaptively responded to by organizations, enable or exacerbate threats and put insiders in positions to carry out harmful acts that degrade the confidentiality and integrity of our organization's availability information systems, damage our organization's reputations, and a whole host of other negative outcomes. So it really requires, proactive insider risk management requires identifying and addressing the concerning behaviors and activity that precede those harmful attacks using a blend of technology and process and good management practices to make our organizations better places to work, have our employees feel better connected, supported by the organization, at the same time having the added benefit of helping better protect our organization's critical assets from insider misuse.
Thanks, Dan. So that's awesome. One of the things that you mentioned was how insider risk is an enterprise-wide challenge. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the challenges that organizations can face when they try to tackle it from, this breadth of disparate technology solutions and why it's really important to have a program?
Yeah, absolutely. So early on in our studies, we recognized that a massive part of this problem is knowing how to contextualize the telemetry that we're able to gather from our technical data collection sources. Not all insider threat incidents tend to evolve over the same exact patterns, but what we saw were these prevalence of concerning behaviors and activity that preceded those harmful events that would have given organizations the opportunity to respond to those stressors, those personal, professional, financial stressors, or address kind of the little things before they started to snowball and become big things that cause organizations harm. So those corrective behaviors that actually most effectively reduce risk from insiders within organizations require the technology and the telemetry to detect those conditions, whether that is changes in patterns with regards to how information technology is being used or authorized access to a file share or a collection of information is being used, or whether that's an increase in levels of disgruntlement or coworker and colleague conflicts, or some set of expectations, unmet expectations with regards to compensation, recognition, and all sorts of soft skills that happen within organizations. So stitching those pieces together is the way that we can gain the most accurate measure of the actual risk to our organization. In many cases, we've seen without the ability to take that data from disparate sources like IT and HR and our management chains, what you end up with is an incomplete picture of the actual insider risk. And what we tend to do is overtrust when we've got those limited pictures of risk. To gain the better picture of risk requires these previously stovepipe parts of organizations to come together, share data, make good risk-based decisions on what to do about that aggregated data. And that aggregated data requires technology to facilitate its collection and analysis at enterprise scale.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Dan. Thanks for joining us and sharing your insights. It was super helpful. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Now we're going to shift gears and talk to a couple of my former colleagues from my last role as an insider risk practitioner here at Microsoft in the security group. So these are the folks who protect Microsoft every day from insider risks, and they were the first customer for the Microsoft 365 Insider Risk solution. So I'm happy to introduce Glenn Coletta and Maud Tijavanija. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your roles, introduce yourself, and how you work with each other?
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. I'm Glenn Coletta. I lead the Microsoft Insider Threat Program and engineering teams. A terrific group of data scientists, security subject matter experts, and engineers. And we work side by side with Maud and her team with the goal of reducing insider threat risk across the whole enterprise.
Nice.
I'm Maud. I am in the security incident response team, and I am dedicated to responding to insider risk. And so I monitor and review alerts that come out of your team, your detection, as well as the insider risk management solution, and coordinate the response with our legal team.
So I remember way back when we started to build out the insider risk program at Microsoft, we had this practice of for every new detection model we came up with, we gave it some silly code name from James Bond, so 007 and GoldenEye, and it's a little silly, and I know you all have come a long way since those early days, but I do want to take it back to those beginning days and get your perspective on what are some of the most important considerations when you're building out an insider risk program.
So it is very interesting. Microsoft has been doing information security for a long time, as you know, Aaron. And so it's very broad, it's very wide. And if you think about the amount of risks that come at us from an external perspective, our ability to defend against that, we don't really have to think a lot about privacy. We don't have to think a lot about culture. We're really in defense mode, and we could be pretty adversarial with these external actors. If they're trying to gain access, if they're trying to attack us with a malware-based approach or denial of service, a lot of those traditional attacks have great defenses, and we just essentially block access or go after them in another way. Insider threat is something that the company looked at a few years back and said, hey, let's be more focused about this, and let's really look at this risk just in its own world. And so for us, a lot of that came down to understanding what the methodologies are, what employees actually go through in order along that attack path. And then we have to think a lot about context. So behavior that takes place from an insider, someone with legitimate access to the resources of the company, those type of activities, identifying anomalous activity, it may be activity that is okay. It may be activity that particular person had maybe the authority to execute against. And so for us, being able to take the context related to that activity, give that into the hands of our analysts, and let them understand that activity and take the appropriate actions, it's a pretty big challenge. And that's what we really focus on a lot with all of our detections.
So you talk about privacy and culture. So I want to focus in on that a little bit because I know it's a very relevant concern in the insider risk space. So talk to me a bit about the unique considerations around privacy for insider risk.
Sure. So when we think about building, for example, a detection, or even if we're going to potentially pursue a control to try to reduce our risk for insider threat, we work very closely with HR, with our attorneys in the CELA organizations, including, by the way, international organizations within regions, to look at all of the privacy issues and all the cultural issues about the expectations that we set and the expectations that we have from all of our workforce. And so it's a fine line, using our technology to go after detections to identify behavior, but also not sort of stepping on the privacy interests of the employees and the staff and the users that we have out there. A lot of thought goes into that.
You know, and privacy is one of the core principles and foundations that insider risk management is built on, and a lot of your learnings have inspired that. Maud, tell me a little bit about how privacy influences the process piece of it, the response and insider risk.
Yes, so on the response side, we do take privacy very seriously. We operate under the principle of need to know, so we only escalate to the people that have a reason to be involved in the case. And we only present information that is relevant to the allegations, so that we don't bring in, other information that might influence the way that the business might look at the allegation. And when we get feedback on the case from our legal team, and if we need to share it with Glenn's team, the engineering team, so they can use the information to improve the model, we would anonymize the case or the names of the individual. Same thing if we need to report statistic to the leadership, we anonymize the name as well to protect the privacy of the employee.
So it sounds like there's a lot of collaboration that's taking place throughout the whole insider risk detection and response process. So Microsoft is a very complex and huge organization. Tell me a little bit more about who you're collaborating with and why it's important.
So on the response side, we work with HR and our legal team quite a bit. And Microsoft is a global team, right? So there's not one legal team that addresses all the cases. We need a team that is very familiar with the employment law of the country that the subject is located in. So since we're not working one legal team or one HR team, we want some consistency in how each team is approaching insider threat at Microsoft. So we created a playbook that gives some basic guidance on how an insider threat case should be dealt with. And we publish that playbook to all the local teams.
And this playbook, it was one of the learnings that helped shape some of the collaboration features within insider risk management. So this importance of being able to engage and collaborate and coordinate with folks across the organization from HR and legal and privacy, because insider risk is such, a unique type of challenge to try to tackle. So one of the other processes that we've talked about quite a bit before is your prioritization process. So you all took this approach of really narrowing in on the highest priority scenarios that you wanted to tackle first versus trying to boil the ocean of this super broad space of insider risk. And this is something that inspired the insider risk management analytics feature within the product. But I want to hear a little bit more from you all and your perspective about why that prioritization process is important and how you did that.
That's a great question. So the scenario-driven approach that we pursue is super important to us. It actually drives every bit of detection-driven work that we do. So if we're going after a new detection or potentially going to improve existing detections, it's all based upon the scenarios. And so we spend a lot of time on that. Our concept is to try to go as far left into the attack path, that's what we call the insider threat attack path, that we possibly can. So if you think about it, before the actual event takes place or series of events takes place, we look for things like stressors in that environment. Could be a contractor, it could be an employee. What are the stressors that we think are there that might cause that employee to take part in that action. We also look very closely at the motivations, especially regional situations. We look also very closely at the targets or the assets. What are these actors going after? How important is it? And then we try to prioritize based on that. Finally, we look at the actual methodologies. What are they actually doing? What tools are they using? How are they gaining access? How are they trying to hide their tracks? And we look for that, and that's really an engineering-driven piece. And the final piece is what controls already exist in this environment. So there could be controls that we could simply just improve or change, and maybe it could make this problem much less significant. In the end, we think it's a good combination of like events for us to look at to really make us decide efficiency-wise what is worth our time going after and what isn't. We have limited resources like a lot of our peer security teams, and I would say we're lucky because we get a chance to talk to many customer security teams. Mm-hmm. We sync with them on where they are in their insider threat journey. They also want to know a little bit how Microsoft approaches this. And so that is super helpful for us. Some of these teams are really mature, other teams they're just starting out, and so we get a chance to learn from them, and it's really beneficial for us.
So Glenn, you brought up efficiency, and this is a very common theme that we hear about in this industry because we know that security teams are often taxed when it comes to resources, and you want to make sure that your teams are focusing on the important tasks and not wasting their time on some of those redundant activities. So talk to me a little bit about how you think about efficiency in terms of the technology that you're using and how you're managing alerts.
Yeah, so Aaron, that's a huge issue for us, like it is for many teams. There are huge numbers of signals out there, right? I mean, in any information security organization, especially as big as Microsoft, we put a lot of work into understanding and really focusing on how do we get the best signals in front of our analysts. And that means when we think about fidelity and quality, what we really mean is the most anomalous behavior associated with the most high-risk activity. We've done a lot of work with machine learning to try to whittle that data down and to try to make it the most quality-driven. And so a lot of that work has really paid off. We've looked at a number of different other options. We've looked at third-party tool sets, and we decided to really kind of take a look at this ourselves because we're closest to the data. We understood, we're Microsoft, so we understand how a lot of these resources are being used within a large corporation like ours. And then we had a lot of lessons learned there. A lot of those lessons, engineering, subject matter expertise, have made their way directly into the IRM tool. And we're pretty proud of that.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Glenn. Thanks for explaining that to us. And I know that we have heard from a lot of our other customers how being able to have this purpose-driven insider risk solution helps drive this efficiency and helps them manage the noise by removing that need to have all those disparate solutions trying to manage insider risk. So thank you for that. So one topic that I do want to make sure that we cover is this topic around culture and how you manage insider risk while maintaining a healthy culture at the organization. So what are your thoughts around that?
So we always assume positive intent. With external threat, the intention is almost always malicious. With insider threat, it's not always malicious. It could be just ignorance of policies or just carelessness. So we always assume positive intent that not everyone is out to do a bad thing. So when we escalate an alert, we use neutral language, and we are clear with whoever we're escalating to that our goal is to protect Microsoft, to protect the information within Microsoft, and we're not out to punish the employees for violation of policy.
So definitely I get the sense that having empathy in how you build out the program and how you respond is important. What about training? What role does training have in insider risk?
So I think it's huge. Setting expectations both for managers, for staff, so that could be vendors or it could be employees, is really important because in this space, there's only so much you can do with detections, and there's even so much you can do with technical controls. Some of this comes down to just user behavior and the choices, like Maud was describing, the choices that they make. We're hoping that they are not choices that are being made with the intent to attack the company. Maybe they are just mistakes. Maybe they are situations in which the employee just wasn't sure what to do. But for us, moving forward with a training program, which is relatively new for us, has been extremely successful so far. Our approach was to go after the managers at Microsoft first, and then slowly but surely phase in more training. And it's been extremely successful. We're about 6 months into that effort, and the feedback that we've received has been terrific.
So shifting back a little bit to technology, because I think that a lot of what we've talked about is how having a successful insider risk program requires this holistic view across training, preventative, detective, response, and across collaboration across your organization. One of the questions that we get a lot from customers is, why can't a DLP tool by itself help them mitigate and detect insider risks at their organization? What would you say to that?
So that's a great question. I know a lot of teams not necessarily struggle with that, but they definitely is a challenge for them. It is for us as well. The DLP definitely serves a purpose. A more traditional DLP approach is typically focused on egress of data throughout any environment. A lot of times it's signature or rules-based, which it absolutely has a place. It's very important, especially for large organizations. But a dedicated insider threat tool set or a focused solution really allows you to look at user behavior, and it allows you to remember back when we first talked about context. It really allows you to identify that context and potentially identify that behavior as far left in the attack path as you possibly can. And when you get those signals into insider risk management tool from the different parts of that attack path, you really have something that is successful. It's a lot different approach than having a simple rules-based egress style DLP approach.
So basically,
they work in conjunction though.
Totally. So having the context around the user and being able to follow the activity based on the user and having that understanding of some of those stressors, like you were saying, if they're about to leave the company.
Absolutely.
That's where it adds a lot of value.
Yeah. And that's where the insider risk management solution really, it's tailored to allow those kinds of signals to come in and just serve as a great clearinghouse for a lot of that, and to be able to present it to an analyst in a really intelligent way.
So, I mentioned this earlier, but you all were our #1 first customer for insider risk management. So Maud, tell us a little bit about some of the benefits that you were seeing since deploying insider risk management at Microsoft.
Well, it's a big time saver with IRM. Before IRM, I would have to go to multiple different data sources and pull this data manually, and then do a manual mapping of this data to create a story and a timeline of what's going on with this user. With insider risk management, all of that is already done for you. All the data is pulled into one place, and all the data that are related to each other, it's already linked together for you. And you can filter by different application, different file types. It just makes reviewing a lot quicker.
Awesome. Well, Maud, Glenn, thank you so much for being here and sharing some of your expertise and learnings in the insider risk space. It was awesome. I hope that everyone got a lot out of this conversation and got an inside view into how we detect and mitigate insider risks at Microsoft. Now we're going to hear from another one of our customers, Avanade.
Avanade is a global company. We have nearly 40,000 employees across the globe. So when we go to clients to deliver innovative solutions, they not only know that we have the right technical aptitude, but that we're delivering those solutions in a secure way. One of the most important aspects of my job is building client trust. Trust is foundational to what we do.
We're entrusted not only with our internal data or our data about our people, but also the data of our clients. Managing insider risk helps us both internally and for us as a client-facing organization. One common scenario for insider risk is around employees that are leaving the organization and ensuring that they don't take with them a lot of the data that we have internally. Microsoft Insider Risk Management is helping us protect our employees as well. So we're getting alerts, high-fidelity alerts that are pseudo-anonymized to help protect the individual and the individual's right to privacy in the workplace. If we can detect unusual activity, it may mean that their account was compromised or that they have done something accidentally, and we can help get ahead of it and respond much quicker before it becomes a larger problem. Avanade wanted to strengthen and streamline our insider risk processes by supporting collaboration between HR, legal, and our IT security teams. And we were looking for a technology that could roll out easily to help respond to those insider risks as quickly as possible.
Leveraging the tools that Microsoft has provided in this space gives me an effective way to make sure that I can communicate to our clients that we're meeting our obligations to manage insider risks at our company.
Microsoft Insider Risk Management really helps us move away from just point solutions. One of the great features is our ability to deploy quickly. There's no complicated scripts or additional tools. It's built into the power of the ecosystem.
Some of the benefits that we've seen is our ability to accelerate time to action on insider threats and reducing detection time, which has reduced the overall fatigue for our administrators.
We really appreciate the ability to look at not just the thousands of alerts that we get out of our SIM, but being able to chain those things together into a higher fidelity alert that really helps us focus on those things that are most important to us.
Quite frankly, it's boosted our overall collaboration and created less friction across the company. This is one of the most important things I can do in my job, is to give our employees the confidence that what they're doing is done in a safe and secure manner.
And that wraps the session today. Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to learn more, you can watch the Insider Risk Management session on demand, and you can visit our blog at aka.ms/insiderriskblog.
We've already learned so much here at Microsoft Ignite. We've learned how to protect our organizations against the latest adversarial trends, stay resilient while managing risk and compliance, and how to strengthen our security posture from some of the industry's principal thought leaders. Now, get excited as we look ahead to the future of security in today's upcoming sessions. Hi, I'm Jessica Feku, Security Product Marketing Manager here at Microsoft. We just tuned in to Microsoft Principal Program Manager Aaron Miyake and friends as they've walked us through 5 primary principles that we've learned in our journey to build an effective insider risk program. Do you have any questions about anything you've heard in today's sessions? Ask us in the chat. Join us with live subject matter experts that are available during every session. If you can't make a session, don't worry, we've got you covered. Everything's available on demand at aka.ms/msignite21_security/on-demand. For the latest on what's happening in Microsoft security, visit us on the web at www.microsoft.com/security or follow us on social at MSFT Security on Twitter and Microsoft Security on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us at Microsoft Ignite.